So hello everyone and welcome to this week's Alertus Power Lunch, Advanced Middleware Configuration, Maximizing Notification and Monitoring and Server Maintenance Settings. This deep dive session will take you into the back end of your Alertus solution, discover how to leverage advanced middleware settings to enable critical monitoring of your Alertus server's health and automatically send notifications when a system or device problem is detected. We will also cover essential server maintenance settings and best practices to efficiently clean up space on your server, ensuring peak performance and reliability. And as always, this is an interactive session, so please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A feature. And please also be aware that the session is being recorded for training purposes, and anyone that has registered will get an email with the recording following the session. But without further introduction, we'll go ahead and get started. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen here so that we can walk through the Alertus console and some essential middleware settings together. So you're probably used to seeing this page in the Alertus console. Right when you do log in, it takes you to a home page here with this left-hand side navigation bar where you can access a number of pages. And all of this is considered the front end of the Alertus server. And the middleware settings that we're going to go through today is referred to as the backend server settings. And access to those middleware settings is most often restricted to just system administrators. You can access the middleware settings for your server by clicking this middleware button at the bottom left of the navigation bar. And if you are logged into your console and you don't see a middleware button, that just means you have a restricted role that doesn't give you access to it. If you did ever have someone that isn't a full system administrator, but you want to make sure that their role does have access to these middleware settings for any reason, you can control who has access here based on their role. If you go under the Configure System section and then open up the Users and Access Rights page down here, you can scroll down to this User Roles section to customize permissions for each role. And like I mentioned, the admin users will have those middleware settings available. System administrators have full access to everything in the system, and that can't be restricted or limited because someone's going to need to have access to everything. But if you did have a custom role, like I have this university admin role, for example, if I wanted to give people assigned to this role access to the middleware settings, I can just edit that role, scroll down to the configuration permissions, and then I could check the settings, console, and middleware option, and that'll give them access to both the settings page and the middleware page if you ever needed to update their access. But now that we've discussed how to get to the middleware settings, we'll go through some of the essential ones. So I'm just going to click this middleware button here, and it'll bring us to this middleware page. This does have a bunch of helpful links and documentation. For example, this troubleshoot section is somewhere that Alertus support might direct you to go if you're working with them. This, for example, is where you can go if you ever need to send your server logs to support. But we're going to focus on some settings under this configure section, clicking the AlertAware middleware settings link. So once I open that up, it'll bring us to this middleware page. And as you can see, there are a ton of tabs here for different settings that you can customize. So you might come here based on your server setup and your system configuration. If you do have like a SIP annunciator, for example, or if you're using the Threat Watcher feature for automated weather alerts, this middleware settings page is where you can manage a number of those settings. But today we're going to focus on the server and notification and monitoring middleware settings that would apply to everyone regardless of the types of devices they have connected. So I did want to start with this notification and monitoring section. You could just scroll all the way down to it, but you can also just click it on the left-hand side. I'm going to start at the top with general, and it'll bring it down for you. But this setting here is where you can manage the notification and monitoring features for your system so that you can enable automated notifications anytime there's an alert or anytime there is like a warning or issue with a specific device or with the server itself. So at the top here, this first section is where you're able to specify the recipient email addresses that you'd like to receive those notification and monitoring emails. By default, you should see this server monitor at alertustech.com email address here. As long as your Alertus server is able to communicate with the Alertus gateway, then Alertus is able to send nightly system information data to this server monitoring program so that we can proactively help you monitor your system and then reach out if we do notice anything. But if you or people at your organization want to get those notifications directly, you can just come here and comma separate the email addresses that you'd like to receive those notifications. So I'm just going to add my email address here as an example. And of course you can add as many as you want, just separate them with a comma. And in addition to specifying email addresses up here, that'll get these types of notifications for every device on the system. You can make it more specialized if you want certain contacts assigned to a group of devices to be the only ones to get notifications for that group. If something in the group is impacted, you can have a contact assigned to that group be the one that's notified. So if I did turn this on, I'll show you how to set it up. But this is helpful if, for example, you might have multiple campuses spread out across the country. So someone in, say, your Baltimore campus, they might not care to get notifications for devices on the DC campus. So this is a way you can make it more specialized. So because I have notify contacts in device groups turned on, I would be able to just notify contacts assigned to the group a device is in when there's an issue. So I'll show you how to set that up. If I come back into the main front end of the Alertus console, the first step would just be to add in those contacts that I'd like to get notifications. So I can come to this contacts page here to add additional ones if needed. You would just click add contact, and then you would fill out their information, including the contact methods that you have added. So I've added myself here as a contact with both my phone number and my email address. And to make sure that you have the option to add an email as a contact method, you would just come down to this contact methods section and click to add a contact method if you don't already see the email option. You would just pick email as the type, save it, and then when you're editing one of your contacts, you would be able to come to the contact methods, add one for them, select email as the option, and put in their email address and save it. So now I've created myself as a contact with an email address associated with my contact. And then the final step would just be assigning this contact to any groups that I'm responsible for monitoring. So I can do that if I come down to this groups page and then click to edit the group I'm responsible for. We'll take a look at this building one group, for example. So in this groups page, when you're editing your groups, there is a contacts field here. And this is where you can select from any of the contacts you've created in the system, and you can use the arrows to assign them to that group. You can also remove them from the group in the same way. But I can see here, because I've been assigned as a contact for this group, and in the middleware settings, I have that notify contacts in device group turned on. That means that I'm going to get emails anytime there is an issue with the devices that are in this group. So that wouldn't necessarily notify me of any other types of devices that aren't in that group. So again, just an option if you wanted to go that route for more specialized notifications to specific people. But going back into the middleware settings, you can, of course, decide which one you want to leave on. And then the next step is specifying warning types. So this is where you can determine the types of warnings that are going to be detected that you'll be notified about. So I just have everything checked by default, but you can, of course, get rid of things that don't apply to your system. Like, for example, if you don't have any alert beacons, you probably don't need to know if alert beacons have low battery. And then if you don't have like USB panic buttons, for example, you might not care about USB panic button check-in failures. So you can customize this based on the types of warnings that you're interested in. And then lastly, this assurance monitoring section, having that turned on is what allows the Alertus server to send that system data over to the Alertus gateway. So I recommend having this on so that we can assist in monitoring your system with you. And once you have those general settings set for the types of warnings that you're looking for and who's going to receive them, the next step here is specifying some additional ways that the notifications are sent out. The first one here is the activation notifier. So if this is enabled, then any email addresses in this recipient email address section are going to get an email whenever there is an alert sent out by the Alertus system. And with that email, they're going to get a summary report to show the device activations for that alert. So if you're interested in getting the activation report for every alert as an email, you can have that enabled. If you're comfortable just coming in to checking the reports in the Alertus console and you don't need emails for those, you can always disable it. And then if you scroll down a little bit farther, the next section here is this active system monitor section. So this is what is going to proactively monitor your system and send an email right away whenever there is a system or device issue identified. So having it enabled just means that it is turned on. You can also specify an execution interval seconds value. That's the number of seconds that the system is going to wait between job executions. So the number of seconds, basically it'll wait before it sends a new email if a new issue is detected. And then there are some additional settings that you can specify as well, especially the number of seconds a device has gone without a check-in before it's considered having not checked in and would send an email out. And then if you keep scrolling down, if you don't want to get emails right away as soon as everything is detected, you do also have the option here to use this daily digest report, either instead of the previous option or in addition to it. But having this daily digest report enabled just means that the system is going to basically wait and collect all of that system information that's been reported throughout the day, and then it's going to send it all in one email as a daily snapshot report of the system at this specific execution time. So you can specify when it's sent out. I have it being sent at 8 a.m. and it's enabled, which means it would send if there was an issue, but you could also turn on this send every day option. And that would enable the daily digest report to be sent every day, even when there are no errors. So that could be a good option if you just want that reassurance that there's nothing being reported with a new email every day. And then, now that we've looked at those notification and monitoring settings, I did want to scroll down next to this server maintenance section. This is a really great spot to go to if you do need to clean up some space on your server. You can, for example, come here to delete old logs or old system backups to free up some space. So this is very helpful if you are someone that does have like several thousand devices where the Apache access log or other logs can grow to be very large every day and take up a lot of space. And currently, these features are supported on Alertus servers that are running Windows. And you can enable and disable a number of features through here. The top one here is the Alertus disk cleanup job. So this is a scheduled job that will free up disk space on the server. So you can determine what's going to be deleted and at what time. So I have this enabled to run the job at 4 a.m. And then I'm keeping this number of these things. So I'm going to keep 14 server access logs, 14 Tomcat logs, and then 10 system backups. You could, of course, adjust these to be whatever number that you want to save. And then if I go above that number, say I have 11 system backups saved, then when it runs that job, it's just going to delete the oldest one so that I stay within the number that I have set here. And then if you keep scrolling down, there is also a data cleanup job here. So this is another option for cleaning up some data on your system. Right now I don't have this turned on, so I'm just keeping all of this information indefinitely. But if you did ever want to, for example, delete some old alerts, that would be the alert information that you can see in the alert history report. Right now I'm saving it indefinitely, so I could download a complete history of everything. But if I don't need to save it forever, I can turn on the job to delete them, and then you can specify the number of days you want to retain that alert information. So you can make that whatever amount of time you'd like. And if you are deleting it, but you still want to have it saved somewhere, not necessarily on your server, you could make it part of your process to, before things get deleted, come to that alert history report, and you could download the complete history to store somewhere else so it's not taking up space on the server. And then, similarly, you can also delete old events from here. This event information is what you would be able to see in the event dashboard, where again, you are able to export this information based on a specific time if you did want to have it saved somewhere, and you can specify how many days you are retaining that event information. And those events would be anything like a panic button press or a weather event, basically any event information that is coming into your system and being processed. And then lastly, there is also the option to delete old system activity. That would be what you could see in the system activity report. So again, if you don't need to keep all this system activity indefinitely, this is information about, for example, who's logging in, who's making configuration changes, any system errors and warnings you can see here as well. You can also export this information as a CSV if you needed to. But back on this page, this is where you can determine how long the system is storing that information. And then if you keep scrolling down to the bottom of this page after you've made any changes, there is a Save Settings button here. There's also a Save Settings button on the left-hand side. So if you are adjusting any of these settings and you want to save your changes, it's not going to save automatically. So just make sure that you do click Save Settings at the bottom so that you can update the settings that you've just changed. There's been a few times I've changed things and then navigated away from the page without saving it. So definitely make sure you click Save, and then it'll update all of the settings that you've adjusted. But I believe that was everything I had on the list to go through in this middleware section for both notification and monitoring settings and also server maintenance settings. But it does look like, I think there is a question in the chat. So I did just want to open up some time now with the last 10 minutes or so that we have. Feel free to put in any questions that you have in the chat. And I did get a question, do you have a recommendation for active system monitor settings? Ours seem high, a large execution interval, for example. So if I'm back in that notification and monitoring section and I'm in the active system monitor section, these are the default settings that if you have it turned on, it would go to by default. You could, of course, adjust them. Typically for like check-in warnings, you would want it to be not too long. 600 seconds would be, how many minutes would that be? It would be about 10 minutes, I think. So I think that is probably about what I would recommend, just to make sure that you are getting notified right away. You don't want to wait too long. Like, you don't want to have it be several hours potentially, because then something could be down and you wouldn't know about it. So generally, these are the default settings that I would recommend. But of course, if you did have a specific reason to make it higher, then that could be something you could talk about with your team. But yeah, generally, I'd recommend the values that I have here. Awesome. Of course, continue to put in any questions, and then I am also going to share some links in the chat. We do have a user guide on the customer portal that walks through this middleware settings page, so I'm going to put the link there in the chat. This will go through notification and monitoring and server maintenance settings that we discussed, as well as some other settings here in the middleware page. If you're interested in exploring more, that user guide is very helpful. And then I do have kind of a big announcement. I'm sure that you all have heard about it already, but we do have our summer 2026 server release that is scheduled to come out on August 11th. And then we are doing a webinar to go over all the updates and changes with the new release on the Thursday following the release. I believe that is on the 14th. No, on the 13th. The customer webinar is on the 13th, the Thursday following the release on the 11th. So I did just put the link in the chat if you would like to register for the release webinar. We're just going to walk through all the updates and changes with the newest server release that is coming out next week. And then lastly, I will also include the link to next week's Power Lunch session. We are following our standard model of after a new release, we have a Power Lunch that focuses on the server upgrade process. So next week's Power Lunch, we are going to just quickly run through a few of the new features that you'll see when you update. And then we have someone from our Alertus support team that will be joining to walk through the server upgrade process during the webinar so that you'll know exactly what to expect when you are updating your server. So hopefully we will see you at both of those upcoming webinars. I'm going to stay on for just a couple more moments in case there are any additional questions. But for everyone that has joined today, thank you for joining. I appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think I'm gonna end it here. But again, thank you for your time and take care.